Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Some are going for a break. It's a shame. It's going to be a good session. So today I'm here to speak to you about quite an interesting topic around how we can shift our mindset to improve cybersecurity posture. So first of all, let's start by looking at the state of the workforce. What we're seeing currently, all the way from the top with C-suite leaders, all the way down to younger employees, is we're seeing that the next generation is stressed, burnt out, and vulnerable. This isn't news to any of us, we all know this. But the really interesting thing is when we start to look from a cybersecurity perspective, the threat landscape is getting more sophisticated than ever before. What we're seeing is AI is creating personalized attacks, and we're struggling to keep up. And the third layer to this is the fact that the state of awareness training, wow, we've got a really, really nice cleared out there. Never had that effect before, but we'll go with it. The next layer is the state of awareness training. So what we're actually looking at a lot of the time, I just came back from RSA in San Francisco. Most of the vendors there are looking at tech to solve the problem, and I've spent over 4 years, my background was in health tech, working with NHSX and Parliament on a whole load of really interesting biohacking research. The thing I'm really excited by is how we can use our body, our mindset, to actually give us that edge and upgrade the human at the root cause. So we're looking at the state of awareness training, and actually people are bored. People are bored of awareness training. So what is this doing? This is creating a perfect recipe for social engineering and hackers. We've got incredibly stressed and burnt out employees. Not only that, but actually the workers, the employees themselves, on the end user and the employee side. AI, deepfakes, and personalized attacks, and people are more distractible than ever before. This is a prime environment for social engineering. Like I said, tech alone can't protect us when 88% of data breaches are caused by human error. Not only this, but then we say, okay, great, let's add training, let's educate people. And actually, while in phishing simulations, we're seeing that 75% of the time, employees are able to recognize phishing in simulations. 20% of the time, they're still clicking on links. This is a stat that changed everything for me, and it's the fact that nearly half of the time, when people are actually clicking on social engineering attacks or getting phished, they're distracted or overwhelmed. This is the bit I'm really excited by. Can we get to the root cause of human error, strengthen the human layer, and upgrade ourselves? So we set off to investigate. I had the privilege of working with some really phenomenal scientists from all over the world, from America, from Cape Town, all over Europe. And we kind of got our heads together, and I did a whole load of deep research with them as to how we can shift the state of the body and the brain and the nervous system into focus or calm in seconds. And this is where I'm really excited about how we can start to use technology for good. Now, this was an image that changed my whole life when I understood it. Because growing up, I always knew that when I was stressed, I couldn't think straight. I'd make mistakes, I'd fall for things, I'd create errors, but I didn't know why. And if you could understand this simple shift, the amygdala hijack in the brain, it can change everything. So on the left, you can see this is your brain under stress. Your amygdala, your fight or flight center, starts to get a massive increase in energy here on the left. And then what we're seeing is on the right, when your mind is calm, you then have increased activity in your prefrontal cortex, responsible for focus, memory, and attention. So if we look at this from a perspective of online safety, this is where it starts to get really exciting. When you're stressed, you act out of fear. You can act on emotions, you can make rash decisions when you're stressed. However, if we create those power pauses in the day, what we can actually start to see is if we shift to calm, we can think critically, we can recognize triggers, and enhance focus. Who's familiar with this guy, the spinning wheel of death on a Mac? Yeah, exactly. And we all know what he's caused by, a complete overload. And I know this is really triggering for a lot of us. It's really triggering. Like, look away if this is upsetting, because it upset me, actually, making these slides. Like, oh, my God. And I actually cleared my whole desktop up before I did this conference. Like, no one can see. And our brains are the same. When we have too many mental tabs open, we then have processing overload. And that leads to stress, overwhelm, and errors. So what's the solution? It turns out mindfulness is one of the best routes to shift our state from stress to clarity in seconds. Why is this? Because you can do it in seconds, you can do it anywhere, you can do it anytime, and there's tons of research to back this. We all know the basics. Mindfulness can help with stress reduction, awareness, cognitive enhancement, and emotional regulation. But this is where it gets really exciting from a security perspective. One of our team actually conducted really exciting research to show that mindfulness alone can reduce 23 out of 33 susceptibility factors of social engineering. Mindfulness alone. That is accessible, that's easy, that's quick. It's really exciting. Not only that, but all of these factors apply to human risk. So we're looking at mind wandering, vigilance, critical thinking, decision-making, distractions, self-control. And again, there's even more research if you're interested. There are some other research studies about how impactful it can be. So you might think, okay, great, this is really cool. There's research there. We can shift our state. We can improve security. This can massively help with social engineering. But actually, how do we make this happen? So first of all, let's look at behavioral design. A lot of what I'm seeing is we're giving people tech. We're not teaching them how to use it correctly, or we're educating them. We're just giving them a training. Here's a training. And I'm speaking to people all across the board that are saying that's not enough. So actually, what we need to start to look at is motivation, ability, and prompt. And this is from a Professor B.J. Fogg out of Stanford University. And the three layers, motivation can be the education, it can be talks like this, the inspiration, the trigger to change your behavior. But then we need to give people the tools and we need to nudge them to create the behavioral change and to make it a habit. So I've spent the past 4 years building a platform that does exactly this. And we're lucky enough to have helped over 150,000 people so far in schools and companies all over the world. And there are three key ways we're actually using mindfulness embedded within technology to shift your state, to biohack your state. One key way is breathwork, audio, and touch. Breathwork's incredible. Top athletes know how to use this. The Navy SEALs know how to use this. In fact, I speak to quite a few of them, and they all know they were trained in this. However, we're inundated with information. We're stressed beyond belief. And the average person isn't learning this. And I had to go through my own experience of kind of figuring all this stuff out, speaking to endless experts and scientists and delving through the research. And just using breath work to transition between meetings. And what I mean by that, it could be 3 deep breaths. That's all it takes. And again, what's really interesting is it can take 6 seconds to change your emotions. So just taking 3 deep breaths before a meeting, before you think, before you act, can completely change your nervous system. The other thing is audio. So I've written music, and I'm absolutely obsessed with music and how it can shift our brain state. So again, started working on some really cool research with binaural beats and started creating binaural beats myself and writing music and getting all of that kind of work out there. So one really cool thing with binaural beats, hands up how many of you are familiar with binaural beats or use them? A few. Nice, okay, cool. So ultimately what binaural beats are is using headphones. You're going to put 2 slightly different frequencies in either ear. And what that's going to do is 100 hertz in one ear, for example, and 104 in the other. Your brain's going to notice a 4 hertz difference. So it's going to trigger your brain and induce your brain into a state of either gamma, alpha, any different brain frequency. Some of these can be used for sleep, creativity, focus, and the one I absolutely love is using it for focus. We've also layered this with music with no highs, lows, lyrics, or breaks, because for those of us that use Spotify playlists or Apple Music playlists, every time you have a new song, it triggers you and takes you out of your flow state. So ultimately, there's a whole science behind how we can be using sound to get us into this deep focus state. Finally, touch. So the other thing we've developed for people that are doodlers or like writing things down, the kinesthetic learners, we've embedded immersive touchpads into iPhones, into computers. Because what this can do is it can give us processing time. Like our computers, they need processing time. Like our brain, we need processing. We need processing time ourselves. So we've kind of developed that and embedded that into the technology as well. How can you use this? So there's a few ways. From speaking to tons of CISOs and people that work in cybersecurity, context switching is a massive challenge. Jumping from one thing to the next, to another meeting, to firefighting. So actually using mindfulness and using these techniques to transition between tasks is incredibly powerful. Then focus and peak performance during a task is another way that you can use this. And then to reset you from a vulnerable state. So again, if you see an email that's going to trigger you, using these kind of techniques to then reset you before you then engage with your emails. So you might be wondering, okay, this is all great, but show me some real life examples and some data. So we actually worked with one of the largest banks in Africa, so a bank called Nedbank, and we worked with 6,000 of their staff. And obviously, as you can imagine, you've got their head of security awareness training that's going, mindfulness, cyber, how does this link? We're going, trust me. Let's do a workshop, let's do some wellbeing days, let's give them the platform, and let's create a culture shift. Because so much of the time, when we look at how cybersecurity is positioned, it's a blame game. It's, you've clicked on something, you've done something wrong. We want to completely reframe that. So we really went with this kind of position of calm minds fight cybercrime. And again, what we found was really exciting. This is again some more kind of examples of the campaign. Within 6 months, the bank had the highest ever reduction in phishing click rates that they've ever seen. They had 98% improvement in well-being and reduction in stress, 97% improvement in focus, and 96% felt more conscious and alert when answering emails. So the results of this were phenomenal, and we worked with their cybersecurity awareness team and the HR team to create an entire movement in the bank, which is still going on today. What was also amazing is we kind of saw the results and the fact that they said it was the best campaign they'd ever done, using this approach, using a mindset-first approach. And again, we've been lucky enough and are lucky enough to be working with some amazing companies, currently including Apple, Google, a whole load of amazing companies. And yeah, I started this talk with a question: is it possible that a simple shift in mindset can completely transform cybersecurity posture? And what I want you to get away with today is that, yes, it can, it is possible. We've got the data, we've proved it, and we're now on this mission to develop the next version of our product. And we're really excited, actually, to see where this is going, because this is a novel approach, seeing how we can use technology to assist us. So much of the time, I see that we're all trying to catch up with technology. Oh, how can I get more emails answered? How can I get more messages answered? How can I fill my calendar? Because there's this kind of race at the moment with how we can optimize our performance. But actually, sometimes we need to slow down, to speed up, and that is everything that we're about. Thank you for listening, and there's also a QR code if you want to get in touch, learn more, feel free, and you can check out the platform as well and just get in touch with us. We have some time if anyone has any questions. Yeah, perfect. Whatever.
Cheers. Hi there, thank you for that. I had a couple of, I was going to say quick questions, but they probably won't be. One was around other variables that might affect how effective this is. Sorry, around any grammatical confusion there. And also around the sample size and the and how that was made up. So what I mean by that would be essentially, how did you measure, or while it's maybe difficult to measure, how stressed were people that were having to deal with these things, like maybe volume of emails, working hours, that kind of thing. And also, I think that you mentioned something like 6,000 in terms of a sample. Was that broken down at all into any subsets? I'm thinking especially around different neurotypes, since I have the sense that that would probably have quite an effect on how users might find the service useful.
Perfect. So the second question was it segmented into neurotypes? So no, we didn't segment it to neurotypes, but it was segmented into departments. But the next stage of what we're doing, we are very keen to start looking at different neurotypes, because you're right, the way that they use technology depending on your neurotype is unique. And the other thing that's really fascinating that we're looking at is your sensory profile. So some of us will learn in different ways. Some of us have a capacity for more auditory learning, kinesthetic or visual or a combination. So we're actually doing more of that at the moment. So looking at the neurotypes, we didn't segment it, that particular case study. And the way we collected it was, like I said, the way that we did it through workshops and education. And we had surveys before and after. And then we had quantifiable data of how focused and relaxed they were feeling. And they rated it on a Likert scale at the beginning and end of every single experience that they tried. And that's how we started to get the data. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that gives a kind of rough overview of that. Thank you. And yeah, the first one, sorry, it's maybe a bit harder to answer. I think you mentioned different departments, and I'm just wondering about a sense of how much this helps in regards to how much it needs to help. Does that make sense? Basically, if you're getting bombarded with 500 emails a day as opposed to dealing with 50 because you've maybe got a different type of role, is that taken into account?
Is that taken, so that the amount of like notifications that you're receiving, is that taken into account?
Roughly, yeah.
No, because I think everyone's going to use it differently. So you would, like I said, I think we advise people to kind of prime, perform, and process those 3 points in your day. So again, if you have 500 emails versus 50, would still recommend you use the techniques in the same way to prime before you answer them, perform during, and then process, regardless of the quantity of notifications or emails that come through. Thank you. Thank you.
Who's next?
In terms of sort of things like binaural hearing and stuff, do you offer any tools for accessibility for people with hearing impairments and things, or are there sort of parallel things to that make those tools accessible to them, or is that research that's ongoing to make those sorts of things available to them?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. We're actually, we're doing both for visual impairments and audio impairments. We're optimizing the next version so it's fully accessible to that. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking. Yeah. Was there another one? Yeah.
Hi there. So I've just been diagnosed with ADHD about a year ago, and I'm 45 years old, so it's fairly late in my life. But I've been using something called Endel, which has been quite good for me, like with binaural beats. But your one seems to be even better because it's got sensory touch. Like, can you explain? I think I missed that. How did the sensory touch element work?
Yeah, so I'm same as you, and like it's very empowering when you get a diagnosis because you're suddenly, oh, that's why I think differently.
That's why I've been weird all my life.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
I can't concentrate.
So from a neuro-inclusive perspective, that was a massive driver with this, because for me personally, I was like, the way we're looking at well-being is very much put into a box. It's like you meditate, or it's quite reductionist approaches. So the idea of this was use an immersive sensory approach, using touch and sound and visuals and a whole load of different things. So the touch pads work as you can use them as like an interactive touchpad. You can kind of play with the screen, and it's got like an immersive smoke feature.
Oh, so what? That's sort of my phone then? Are you saying?
On the app that we've developed. So those are the tools that we've developed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you can use it to process information and context switch. That's the best ways to use it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to download the app.
Thank you.
I think we've got time for one or two.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, yeah. You spoke about this kind of like sensory overload that kind of happens and stuff like that as well, and how that can impact the susceptibility of kind of people then getting kind of phishing attacks and stuff against them. Are you finding that you can use this stuff to help just with general focus rather than just, phishing attacks and cybersecurity stuff as well?
Yeah, exactly. So it initially started for just general focus, and that is exactly the initial use case. And then we saw the results when it comes to online security. And we were like, wow, this is a really exciting application. No one's looking at that. And it was quite a novel approach that we've seen drastic results. So for both, it can be used, in answer to your question, for both focus generally, and also for cybersecurity posture, yeah.
So I see you've got like an app and a web app and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is it things that you can actually do with companies where you come in and take them through like a course as well?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions? If not, I've got one. So with more businesses returning back to the office, or there being more like in-person, like workspaces, what do you think like the biggest challenge, I don't know, for like employers to make sure that space, I don't know, is accessible as possible for everyone's different work pattern, and we're all having to like learn how to try and focus when there's a million things going on around. What would be your thoughts?
That's a really good question. So it's what can companies do to make offices more accessible?
Yeah,
and
or
help
like
people
teams that
focus?
might have like their areas set up, or
There are so many things. There are so many things you can do, and I'll just give a few examples. I think having quiet spaces, having these in-between third spaces is fundamental. I love that you've got one here. I think it's really powerful, especially for people that are neurodivergent, as Holly all know. So I definitely think having those third spaces. I think as well having access to nature, light, natural light is really important. Quiet spaces for people to process and think. There's a few other ways, again, when we work with people that also look at spatial kind of spatial improvements for offices, even having the sounds of like a fountain is calming for people. Like I said, natural light, having like nature in the office, and again having those spaces people can break out and just focus, because you're right, there's so much overstimulation and noise in so many offices. So having that quiet space that people can have permission to switch off, I think is really important.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Fab. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for listening. And feel free to get in touch if you have anything. Thank you.